Hi everyone, and welcome back to Unit Standard 24472. We are looking at So2, Prepare a Program. And this is something you'll have to take with you all the way to level 5 or beyond, wherever you're taking your education from this point forward. You will always need to understand how to prepare a program. So, we are looking at the structural features of effective professional development. So, we are looking at professional development programs, and the first thing we look at is duration and intensity. How long is the course, and how intense is the course? So, if it is one can actually influence the other, duration can influence intensity, and intensity can influence duration. If you have a minor course to complete, it can be anywhere between 1 to 4 months. It can be information intense, however, short in duration. However, your duration can also affect your intensity in that if it is a short course but it is information packed, it can become extremely intense to complete. Then you have to look at involvement of professional development advisors and researchers. So, who is it that has had a hand in this professional development program? Who assisted with the program development? Is it someone who is a renowned researcher? Is it someone who's very knowledgeable? Is it someone who's got no idea what they're doing? And all of these questions will lead you to decide whether or not the researcher is reputable, that whoever developed the program is reputable or not. And so you do that by looking at the level of education of those who assisted in actually establishing the goals that actually established the program in itself. You can also bring in new practitioners. You can bring in new faces to assist to ensure that the program being developed is developed by a diverse team of people who bring diverse skills to the table. And then the whole service approach that is bringing staff together to work towards a common goal, to work from common understandings and appreciation. And so that does not imply that professional development with only some of the services, teachers, or educators is not beneficial, especially if these participants are able to use their knowledge and understanding to mentor others. So essentially, what you're saying is we can use everyone in the team here. We can take an educator, we can take an administrator, and they can go ahead and be mentors to those who are trying to understand the field. Then the participants, the level of training and qualification of the participants will influence the time necessary to make changes to pedagogical practices, beliefs, and understanding. So, when we look at pedagogical practices, we look at the methods of teaching and training and so on. And so, is it a group of professionals who have already done an undergraduate qualification? They've already done a postgraduate qualification, they're moving on to perhaps a PhD. Perhaps these are PhD students who are working together. And in that, that is also going to give you an understanding of the level of difficulty of the actual program. Whereas if you are at an entry level and you're only starting with your qualifications, the level of difficulty will be less intense. And now we look at professional development advisors. These are your leaders, right? An advisor is someone who is giving you direction. So that is a very big job. And professional development advisors need strong theoretical content in pedagogical knowledge. They need to have understanding. They need to be well read. They need to be well studied before they can tell you what to read, what to study, and what to do. The ability to collect and analyze data and teach data collection and analysis skills. So they must be able to say, okay, I am able to go ahead, I am able to read scholarly articles, to understand them, to pull them apart. We call it parsing, Parsing. So to pull it apart, to analyze it. And they are able to then come to a good conclusion of that information. They have to have excellent communication and relationship skills, which means they have to have very good interpersonal skills. They need to be able to communicate with you. They need to be able to build a healthy relationship with you, as opposed to just, I don't know, seeing you as an obstacle or something on the list of things to get out of the way. And so they need to be able to be humble enough to want to teach you, patient enough to want to advise you, to be reflective thinkers. So they also need intrapersonal skills. They need to be able to look within. They need to be able to think about what they have accomplished, what they have done, where they can be better, and how to practice in a better way, as to how to advise others to do the same. They need to be able to mentor, model, provide feedback, challenge, and model reflective thinking. They need to be able to understand and be able to challenge practices and ideology that disempower interests of children and families. And this is what education and academics is about, isn't it? It's about going in, looking at the current data, looking at the current information, and saying, I agree or I disagree. And if I find something I disagree with, the reason I disagree is due to the following observations that I've made, due to the data I have read. You'll have people who are for certain ideologies and people who are against them. We can think of a million, religion being the biggest one of those factors, is that you're for a certain religion, you're against it, and you've got your reasons as to why. And so you look into it, and you look at experience, you look at faith, you look at knowledge, and you go ahead and you ask yourself, what is it that seems or that stems true to me? So now if you are reading academic work and you say, look, I disagree, then go ahead and disagree. The reason we ask you to do so much research is because we want to teach you how to think on your own. You are not just supposed to write your research in your own words. That is one of the things you ought to do, but you should also be able to critically discuss the information you've received and then to give a conclusion based on what you have received. You then need to be able to practice effective pedagogy themselves. So the advisor needs to be able to practice effective pedagogy themselves. And so that is teaching methods, practices of teaching, the way you go about presenting your information. If you are an advisor, these skills obviously attach to you as well. You need to be able to carry them and practice them. Then we look at the organization of the service. So the features within the service may act as constraints or support participants in implementing pedagogic change and processes of data collection, analysis, and collaborative discussion. So you need to be able to ensure that those constraints, you need to be able to rid yourself of as many constraints as possible. And you need to be able to implement the data, the collection, the information that you've been given throughout your program. And then your staffing levels, that means that there needs to be a good ratio in group size, that staff need to be able to form a close and reciprocal relationship, which means they respect each other. It goes both ways. When something is reciprocated, there is a give and there's a take. And so reciprocal relationship means that from both ends, there is a give and a take. And they work together. They work together to ensure that they meet the common goal. Tools and support to assist with analysis, evaluation, and planning. So it is valuable for practitioners to have access to a range of tools and conditions to support analysis, evaluation, and planning, given the importance of these for effective pedagogy. On a practical level, this means that physical conditions and materials enable documentation and discussions of the nature and the purpose of teaching and learning. You need to have a print budget. That is a very big thing. You need to be able to access professional development advisors who are able to work in the center as well as with wider groups. And you have to have a research community that engages with teachers in useful discussions of research and thinking. When you discuss, you organize your thoughts. You are hearing what others have to say about it, you are hearing what you have to say about it, and you are able to organize your ways of thinking. Now, the conditions within the early childhood center to support effective pedagogy. If early childhood education centers are to be learning communities for teachers as well as children, parents, and others, There needs to be opportunities within the work environment for experimentation, reflection, documentation, and planning. And what this means is that center management need to value ongoing support and ongoing professional development. And so you need a team of people who say, I want to be better, I want to do more, I want to grow. Teachers who prioritize growth, teachers who make time for effective opportunities during during the work week for reflection and discussions, meaningful professional development provided by professional development advisors. So, people leading you in the correct way, people who have gone before you, who are able to lead you forward. And we have to discuss this because it is one thing to say, right, I am now qualified, and it's a different thing to say, but I still want to grow because times change and you meet new clients and new children and new people. So you need to be able to enhance that professional growth, which is what we're covering. It's how are you going to get better in your field to ensure that you keep up with the times and the growth of your environment. Then we look at further investigation. So we need to show where evidence is lacking but not insufficient. My apologies, where evidence is lacking or insufficient. And recommendations for research are discussed below. So, like linkages to outcomes for children. So, research evidence on professional development linked to the outcomes of children within the principles. So, essentially, what all of this information is asking you is to expand your knowledge base. So, you need to show, is the knowledge that we have sufficient in showing us where there is a link of professional development to outcomes for children within the principles? Is there enough longitudinal research of teachers and children to provide evidence of conditions? So your length or your longitudinal research, that is this ongoing research, is this research that has taken place consistently? Are we able to go back to a starting point and say, when this started, the teachers and the children were at this level, but now after implementing growth programs in the center, implementing new courses in the center, we can see based on the research that as time has gone by, there has been an increase in knowledge. There has been a greater outcome of learning. So you're expanding your knowledge base about pedagogy and content knowledge to inform professional development. You then look at your partnerships. So, further investigation of professional development approaches to strengthen partnerships between home and early childhood setting. Remember, when you are working with a child, you are working with a team. Hence, it takes a village to raise a child. You are part of that team and you have team members and you all work together. So, there's a partnership between home, between yourself, between the pediatrician, between the social worker, and so on. Structural features. So, this is the mixture of those involved, whether it's qualified and unqualified teachers, and how they offer differentiated curriculum. Remember, in South Africa, we use the CAPS curriculum. We are going to touch on that briefly just before your exam. So, in this, we ask ourselves, how is it implemented and who implements it? When we look at service features, so some gaps in evidence for specific services, for example, what is the gap? How is it that we are going to bridge it? Is it that teachers know how to work with different children, children with special needs, children from socioeconomic backgrounds, children from different race groups, and so on? So the service features, who is are they able in their skill capacity to provide in different environments, and if not, how can we bridge that gap? Then you've got research accessibility. So practitioners need to have access to useful research evidence and information on workable approaches to building investigation and analysis into their pedagogical practice and working in partnerships with research and professional development advisors. So essentially, you need to be able to have the opportunity to look up information. You need to have opportunities to ask questions because that is also research. You need to have information that is accessible to you. So, how can early childhood settings encourage parents to advocate for their children? This is important. We want parents to be involved. And so, parents can provide a welcoming environment. You need to be a fan of your child, a believer in your child, someone who uplifts your child. And so that starts with a welcoming environment to say, I am here, I can listen to you, I am able to pay attention to you, and you matter. You need to also consider family contexts. And so, what kind of family are you working with? What is their background religiously, ethnically, socioeconomically? And so, in that way, are parents able to provide for their children in the utmost capacity, or are they not? And how can you assist them with that? Remember, children need very little. They need your love and your attention and your commitment. But in terms of money, they need to have their basic needs met, their shelter, their food, their clothing, their healthcare, but they don't require fancy clothes. They don't require a triple story house. They don't require a big SUV. They don't require the latest of the latest television. They don't require all the luxurious goods that we fill our homes with in hopes that we can keep them occupied so we can carry on doing something else. That is not what children need. So, when we consider the family context, you may consider that some children come from materially poorer environments and some do not. But you should also consider that some children come from an holistically poor environment where others do not. And so you need to consider both ends of that spectrum when considering family contexts. Now, your dialogue, or my apologies, before I even go into that, yes, you need to be able to, um, with considering the family context, you need to, in your initial discussion about safety, help build the beginnings of trust in a caring relationship between yourself and the parents as well, not just between the child and the parent. Now, with your dialogue, you need to be proactive about sharing information. Information is key. It is the starting point of dialogue. Parents can't begin to advocate if they don't have information about what is happening in their child's development. A lot of times, parents don't know what to do or what to ask. So, parents also need to be able to know about their children. They need to have communication sent to them about their children. If you notice something about their children that you're not sure if they've noticed, you should bring it up. If you are worried, you must bring it up. But remember to bring it up in such a way that you are not belittling the parent or belittling the role that they play in the child's life. Then you need to encourage questioning. We need to open the doors and encourage parents to ask questions about their child's learning and care. So, if we do this on an ongoing basis, parents will become open and ask the questions that need to be asked. And this practice is critical. Now, some parents are extraordinarily difficult. They want to make your life as a practitioner so difficult. They don't give their children half of what you give their children, but they scrutinize and criticize everything you do. And you know what? You need to be patient but stern with parents like those. Because if you are a leader, let's say if you are running your ECD center, you cannot allow yourself or your staff to be abused for a little bit of money at the end of the month. So you need to be able to allow parents to ask questions and you should answer them very patiently and you should have a very good relationship with the parent. But you should also be able to say, right, that is actually enough now. I feel you are scrutinizing or criticizing. Let us talk about your child's academic performance and let us look at all of the research communicated. And so you also need to be able to say, right, I also have questions. Are you sitting with your child when you get home from work? Are you doing homework with your child? Who is doing homework? Because I notice there is a gap. So, as much as parents should ask questions, you should, in a respectful manner, be able to do the same. Now, when we look at national policies and guidelines for program planning, UNICEF has had the following to say. This national integrated early childhood development policy is aimed at transforming early childhood development service delivery in South Africa, in particular to address critical gaps and to ensure the provision of a comprehensive, universally available, and equitable early childhood development service. Right, so we know what policy is, right? We understand that policy is the conduct or the action, okay? It's the course of action adopted. So you know under these guidelines, or you'll say that our center's policy states that children who have a temperature of 37 degrees or higher may not come to our center for the day. Their parents must take them home to be checked, because if the child's temperature continues to rise, he or she may fall into a fit. Now, these are your guidelines. This is the method of action. It's your plan of action. That's your policy. So the national plan of action is to ensure that equitable, equal, and accessible education is there for the taking. Okay, so that everyone, regardless of their background, is able to be educated. It is here in particular to address critical gaps, to ensure that provision of a comprehensive, a universally available, and equitable childhood development service is met. And so, when we are discussing our programs in terms of national policy, we need to state whether or not our programs meet these criteria. So, these criteria, a program consisting of the above elements should include nation specific, culture specific, and socioeconomic specific aims and information to prevent or bridge gaps in foundational learning. When you are developing your program, you need to ensure that your program covers all of the herein mentioned elements. Now, for your activity, you are to design and compile an early childhood development program with relevance to the national policies and guidelines. Your answer must be at least 2 pages in length. You must consult at least one source other than your learner guide. In-text referencing and bibliography are compulsory. So here is an example of what your bibliography ought to look like. Remember to read your administration letter for bibliography guidelines. And over here, where we've got UNICEF, 2015, that is what your in-text referencing ought to look like. Okay, so when we speak about an early childhood development program, you can say this is a very broad question. So, what you can do is you can go ahead and you can say, right, my early childhood development program is to encourage children to have the opportunity or to be able to read by the age of 5. When they are 5, before they go to grade 1, I would like for them to be reading at a basic level. So, that is the rationale, that is what you aim to do. And then you'll say in your rationale you can consider the reason I want this is so that by the time they go to grade 1 and they head into the foundation phase, they have a solid foundation to build on. So that's your why. Why is this the program you have chosen? And once you have your why, you are able to start. So you don't need to tell me why you are writing it. I'm just telling you that you need to understand why you are doing this program so that you have an aim and a direction as to what you are doing. So, your early childhood development program, you're going to write it out and in the form of an essay. And you're going to say, for this program, what I aim to do, or the program aims to ensure that children must be reading by the age of 5. In order to achieve this, the resources I will be using are as follows. So, you can actually, in order to structure your essay, to make it easier for you, you can list them under the following headings. You can say resources and materials. You can say tools to be used, age group that you will be discussing, objectives that you would like to meet, and how you will be implementing your program. So then in your how, you will say, I'm implementing my program by giving children the alphabet in the beginning of every day. We will clap while we do our alphabet. When we are on the field, when we're doing hopscotch, we will say our alphabet out loud. And every day for at least half an hour, I will commit to sitting with the children to do a bit of reading before our day gets started. Included in this, I will send the following work home in order to ensure, my apologies, that children are practicing when they get home. They will have to write out their alphabet. They must fill out the blanks of certain letters they will have to do. And you can list a few activities you'd like to give them. So you're outlining the program. Once again, you're using the headings that I discussed with you, and you can write out exactly how or what your program looks like using those headings as guidelines. Now, if you have any questions, if you have any queries, please feel free to contact us.